On December 7, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy attacked the U.S. naval base of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The Japanese wanted to cripple U.S. military power in Southeast Asia. The base was attacked by over 350 Japanese planes, and all 8 American battleships were damaged, 4 of which were sunk. An Imperial Japanese Army pilot crash-landed on the Hawaiian island of Niihau during the attack on Pearl Harbor. 3 Japanese locals aided the pilot by helping him escape and kill his captors. This gave the American public justification on why the Japanese could not be trusted. Roosevelt declared the day a date which will live in infamy. Following that, he signed the U.S. Declaration of War. The American public experienced anti-Japanese sentiment, racism, and xenophobia. This also finalized the U.S. conversion to a war economy. Roosevelt signed and issued Executive Order 9066. This authorized certain areas to become military zones. This cleared the way for the relocation of Japanese Americans into internment camps. The order did not target a specific race, but Japanese Americans were most affected by it.
Korematsu vs. the United States was a Supreme Court case concerning the constitutionality of Executive Order 9066. In defiance of the order, Fred Korematsu, an American-born citizen of Japanese descent, refused to leave his home. His conviction was upheld, and Justice Hugo Black said the need to protect the U.S. from potential spies outweighed Korematsu's rights. In the case of Hirabayashi vs. the United States, the Supreme Court held that the application of curfews against members of a minority group were constitutional when the nation was at war with the country from which the minority group originated. Gordon Hirabayashi was imprisoned for defying the federal government's internment laws. The Ringo Report was written by the Office of Naval Intelligence to show that most Japanese Americans were not a national security threat and that the FBI did not actually find accounts of spies among American citizens of Japanese descent. However, the report was kept hidden to justify the Roosevelt administration and was not found until 2011. The National Security Agency believed that by forcing all the Japanese to be relocated to internment camps, they would ensure the safety of U.S. code-breaking efforts. It would be necessary to reveal this secret information for effective prosecution of Japanese spies. If accounts of code-breaking were revealed in trials of individual spies, the Japanese Navy would change its codes.
Japanese people were the target of racism and prejudice. They were demonized in propaganda posters, and there was a great increase in anti-Japanese sentiment. People also created the idea of Japans, where they stated that it was open season for Japanese people. They also had fake Japanese hunting licenses.
In the internment camps, the Japanese lived in tar paper-covered barracks with no plumbing or cooking. They were only given blankets, cots, and mattresses. They were common areas for eating, washing, and laundry. The camps were surrounded by a barbed wire fence and were constantly patrolled by guards. They faced extreme temperatures, sometimes above 100 or below negative 30 degrees.
Department of Justice camps were run by the Immigration and Naturalization Agency in the U.S. They took immigrants of Japanese heritage from Latin American countries such as Peru and put them into American camps. In fact, about 7,000 Japanese were placed in these camps. Unfortunately, after the war, these countries from which they came did not accept them back. Let's talk about Japanese Americans now. The Wartime Civilian Control Agency camps were located along the coast, the western coast of California. They were temporary camps that were by no means ready for the large influxes of Japanese Americans, so they were mainly used to send Japanese Americans to the central camps. Now, these central camps were run by the Wartime Relocation Agency. It was run by Milton Eisenhower and created by President Roosevelt with Executive Order 9102. These camps were located mostly in central states such as Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, and they could hold between 8,000 and 20,000 people. Now, the U.S. government actually passed a law that allowed Japanese Americans to renounce their U.S. citizenship. About 5,500 Japanese did so. 5,000 of these people were from the largest internment camp in Tule Lake, California. About 1,000 of these Japanese moved back to Japan, and the ones that did stay felt ashamed for renouncing their U.S. citizenship. A lot of interesting things were going on in Hawaii at this time. About 1,800 Japanese Americans lived in Hawaii, and there was a huge debate in the U.S. government on what to do with these Japanese. They decided not to waste resources and actually not to intern the Japanese, since Hawaii was already in martial law and there wasn't much threat of espionage.
Japanese Americans were categorized as enemy aliens and were not subject to draft. Only the 298th and 299th Regiments remained in service and performed so well in training that the government reversed its decision on disallowing them from serving in the Army. The regiments became the 100th Infantry Battalion, and 3,800 volunteers were inducted into the 442nd Regiment. Probably the most heroic mission by the 442nd was the rescue of the Lost Battalion in northern France. From October 26 to 30th, 1944, the 442nd endured heavy fighting until they were able to break through German defenses and rescue the 141st Regiment. On December 17, 1944, U.S. Major General Henry C. Pratt issued Public Proclamation No. 21 that allowed the Japanese internees to return to their homes as effective January 2, 1945. They were only given $25 and a train ticket. Most of them had nothing left to go back to. They gave up their homes, jobs, and belongings. Some returned to find strangers living in their homes and had to evict them before they could move back in. It also turns out that of the 10 citizens that were arrested for spying for Japan, 0 of which were actually Japanese. In 1948, the federal government distributed a mere $37 million in reparations. But it wasn't until August 10, 1988, when President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act that provided an official apology and a payment of $20,000 to each surviving internee.